It's Friday, December 11. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom. The St. Catherine Health Department is currently managing a cluster of COVID-19 cases at the Jamaica Constabulary Force Police Academy in Central Village, St. Catherine. The health department was called to the facility by its medical team, who had observed several persons displaying COVID-19 symptoms. The health department sampled some 280 junior and senior recruits and instructors, of which 47 of the batch, including 2 instructors, were found to be positive for COVID-19. The health department has since ordered that the section of the campus be quarantined and the positive patients isolated for further observation. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Thompson is again appealing to the public to follow the COVID-19 preventative protocols, such as the wearing of masks and social distancing.
The word on the ground, the reports from all the critical stakeholder bodies, not just public health workers, by the way, they are required to report back, but from the hospitals, in terms of occupancy or persons demanding hospital care, from the police or constabulary who helps with enforcement, is that too many of our citizens or residents in these areas are not considering the protocols. They're not wearing the masks. They're still having the parties. They're still moving around and congregating beyond the 15 maximum that is required. And as a consequence, they're spreading the virus.
As the country continues to see a fluctuation of cases, Chief Medical Officer JACQUILINE MCKENZIE singled out the parish of Westmoreland, which has been seeing a rise in infections. She urged citizens to take all necessary precautions to prevent an explosion of cases.
Over the last month, we would have seen an increase in the number of confirmed cases and also an increase in the number of hospitalizations and also an increase in the number of deaths. And Westmoreland, we have Westmoreland now representing 4.4% of our total confirmed cases, 16.4% of our confirmed cases over the last 2 weeks, and we are having the greatest amount of deaths per population in Westmoreland. And we want the persons in Westmoreland to pay particular attention in these areas in Negril, Little London, Grange Hill, Big Bridge, Landio, White House, Frome, Savlamar Business District, Sheffield, Petersfield, Bluefields, Georges Plains. Now, those are where we're seeing the active cases now over the last 2 weeks, and we're asking persons from right across the parish to help us to prevent this from getting out of hand, from getting any worse, from overwhelming our hospitals in the parish.
They were speaking at Thursday's COVID-19 Conversation virtual press conference. On Thursday, we saw the Ocean Panel launch of the symbolic Handover blue papers at Jamaica House. In September 2018, Prime Minister Andrew Holness joined 13 other world leaders to be part of the Ocean Panel. Speaking at the launch, he said the gesture indicates Jamaica's commitment to sustainable ocean management.
On December 2nd, 2020, the members collectively put forward a new ocean action agenda to achieve 100% sustainable ocean management of areas within national jurisdiction guided by sustainable ocean plans by 2025, and to support a global target to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. The agenda was not derived in a vacuum, but rather was the result of an unprecedented scientific knowledge base for action, including 20 commissioned blue papers, 3 special reports, and a politically endorsed document.
Minister without portfolio in the National Security Ministry and environmental advocate, Senator Matthew Samuda, will chair the panel.
The 20 blue papers which the Prime Minister will hand over today. These blue papers touch a variety of topics, but what it does, colleagues, and what it does for all of those watching, is that it will give our heads of agencies, it will give academia, and it will give our citizens a view and a roadmap of sorts for how we need to see ourselves as an ocean state, the policy decisions that we need to make, and ways in which it will benefit us.
The GOJ's push towards achieving ocean sustainability was bolstered by establishment of a multi-agency National Council on Ocean and Coastal Zone Management to formulate marine sector policies and promote public awareness of the importance of marine resources to sustainable development. 83 fisherfolk have gotten an early Christmas present from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. The group, mainly from St. Catherine, recently received vouchers valued at $30,000 each to purchase gear and equipment. Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, in his remarks at the handover ceremony on Thursday, said more funding is on the way, as the aim is to support 5,000 licensed fishers from across 137 communities. Plans are also being made to procure cold storage containers to place them at strategic locations across the island for use by fishers. The government has earmarked more than $50 million to fund the Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project. The project was officially launched this week. Prime Minister Andrew Holness joined dignitaries from the United Kingdom and the Caribbean Development Bank for the virtual event. He said the project is a direct response to the need to repurpose lands previously used for planting sugarcane. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says he agrees with the view that Jamaica needs to expand its agricultural footprint.
The sugar industry is changing and it is releasing significant lands. What are we going to do with these lands? We can't just allow them there to sit idly by. And there is increasing developmental competition for the land. Some people want it for housing. Some people wanted to build other kinds of infrastructure, to convert it into industry and logistics. And of course, there are those who want to keep it in agriculture. I am certainly sympathetic to the view that we need to increase our agricultural footprint. And as many acres of those lands as we can use, we should use. And so I'm very happy to officially launch the Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project today, because it signals the government's intent to continue its thrust in agriculture.
The project has a number of variables which will see the development of land in Clarendon and St. Catherine through infrastructure, equipment and marketing. Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries Floyd Green says some 700 farm groups will benefit.
Our farmers show us that by nature they are resilient. They are willing to go out despite the ravages of weather and to continue to farm. Their resilience, however, has to be matched by the infrastructure needed to boost their productivity and to truly transform the sector. This Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project comes against this background, with the aim to support and promote agricultural development through the provision of an irrigation infrastructure which will provide adequate water supply, irrigation and drainage services, along with the appropriate agricultural marketing solutions to ensure that we are developing a socially inclusive, gender equitable and climate sensitive agricultural sector.
The project is being supported by the Caribbean Development Bank RADA, Agro Investment Group, and the governments of Canada and the UK.
But the choices we make as we reassign our resources will be strategic. And there'll be more expenditure related to COVID, and Jamaica will benefit from access to vaccines under the COVAX program that we are supporting. And we've already added much needed capacity here for rapid testing and other essential COVID requirements. And as we move towards hosting the next UN conference on climate change in Scotland next year, we will commit more money to help countries like Jamaica, which has already shown huge ambition in its nationally determined contribution. It's also worth noting, Prime Minister, that the UK continues to fund a massive share in the development budget of the European Union. And as our way forward is agreed with the EU, we will ensure that the transition to full British control of our development funds will continue to be a source of support for Jamaica and other countries that we've long partnered. The project we are celebrating today falls under the £330 million UK Caribbean Infrastructure Fund.
Prime Minister Holness also addressed changes to licensing to import chicken back and neck and how to augment local produce of chicken and fish.
I have asked the Minister of Agriculture, long before this report, to examine ways in which we could shock-proof our protein supply chain, both for chicken and fish. So that would mean, for example, supporting the tilapia farms that exist, expand that production to make it more affordable and to ensure that they are grown under conditions that are environmentally friendly and healthy for human consumption fully, and indeed have some taste. And then to look at the potential here of growing feedstock for feeding our chicken. What could be used?
He also addressed the issue of overfishing in Jamaica and highlighted the importance of the parrotfish to the ecosystem and the country's marine health.
We have to be far more enlightened in how we manage our fishery resources. We can actually fish it to an end. It is possible, and we have seen it.
Minister of National Security Dr. Horace CHANG says homicide numbers are marginally below those recorded last year. However, Minister CHANG told parliamentarians this week that there are concerns with the recent spike in criminal activities across police divisions. Gang activity is of particular concern.
One of the irony of fighting criminal violence, especially gangs, is when the leadership is removed from the area, the second line operatives become far more violent as they fight for not only turf but for rising in the order in the ranks of the gangs.
The security minister noted recent moves against the notorious Klansman gang.
One of the large on the island. Recently, I think some 36 members were arrested in the Savannah area. They are likely to be charged on the predicate offense because they have strong cases in criminal activity that I'd like to get them convicted more quickly. But we are continuing to pursue a number of gangs on the Anti-Gang Act, which is coming up for review. We have gone through the parliamentary process, and it is now back with us to bring back to Parliament, and we hope to look at the cases that have gone through and look at how we can strengthen that piece of legislation.
The anti-gang legislation is aimed at dismantling criminal organizations that are the root of violence and lawlessness. Dr. CHANG says that the upcoming amendments will ensure that the police have stronger tools to eradicate criminal gangs in the country. Thursday, December 10, would have been the 96th birthday of Michael Norman Manley. Mr. Manley served as the 4th Prime Minister of Jamaica from 1972 to 1980 and from 1989 to 1992. He was also president of the People's National Party. He was honored with a floral service on Thursday. Marlon Samuels tells us more.
In honor of Michael Manley's 96th birthday on Thursday, floral tributes were laid at his resting place at Hero Circle. Among those that laid tributes were Labour and Social Security Minister Carl Samuda, Opposition Leader Mark Golding, and People's National Party General Secretary Dayton Campbell.
Mr. Manley was one of Jamaica's most visible figures. Whether you agreed or disagreed with his beliefs, ideology, philosophy, or policies, no one can deny that Michael Manley was genuinely concerned about the welfare of the people of Jamaica. He demonstrated his belief in the people's cause first as a trade union leader and then as Prime Minister. The Manley years saw legislation which established, for example, a minimum wage for all workers, including domestic workers. The formation of the Jamaica Movement for the Advancement of Literacy, known then as JAMAL, which administered adult education programs with the goal of involving 100,000 Jamaican adults each year. He expanded land reform. He lowered the minimum voting age to 18 years, and he introduced equal pay for women and the introduction of maternity leave.
Michael Manley championed a democratic socialist program in the 1970s and still remains one of Jamaica's most popular prime ministers. He died on March 6, 1997 of prostate cancer. He is interred at the National Heroes Park in Kingston, where his father, Norman Manley, is also interred. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Marlon Samuels.
When it comes to fiscal transparency, Jamaica scores moderately well. This according to public policy think tank, the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI. In this expanded business report, host Gabrielle Thompson takes a closer look at CAPRI's findings as well as provides regular market data.
Democracy depends on the ability of a people to know what their government is doing, with their money.
The Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, says Jamaica scores moderately well in transparency relating to fiscal matters.
Indeed, Jamaica's score puts it right near the median in terms of the global average. This is fairly impressive for a small country, and small countries necessarily have less public bureaucratic capacity. But it still remains far below the benchmarks for which we aim, and the benchmark would be what the OECD countries, that's a group of mostly rich countries with tremendous public administrative capacity. And so that's what we're aiming for.
This scorecard assesses countries using 3 components: transparency, public participation, and oversight. These are then applied to the formulation, implementation, and review phases of the budget cycle. Executive Director of CAPRI, Dr. Damian King, says Jamaica doesn't score well on public participation, however, indicating that we are well below the global average in terms of channels for public participation. In the formulation of the budget, he says there is no capacity in existence for citizens to have any input. What does exist are year-end focus groups by the Accountant General's Department, where citizens can write in and provide information. To this end, CAPRI is recommending the creation of a fiscal council. The Research Institute says this council would be an independent body to examine fiscal matters, report directly to the Parliament, giving it the research capacity to better perform its oversight function. CAPRI says Jamaica does reasonably well on fiscal openness and makes the following recommendations for improvement.
Government should publish some kind of pre-budget statement to indicate what its intentions are going to be and what it is looking to implement, to give some period where the public can provide feedback. The budget itself should be presented earlier, before the beginning of the fiscal year, again to provide greater opportunity for people to make commentary on it. The fiscal policy paper interim report, or whatever is going to satisfy looking at the budget as it is implemented, also needs to have more disaggregated information and different classifications. The biggest improvement can be made by establishing channels for public participation at every phase of the budget process, and to put in place some kind of established point where Parliament examines the Auditor General's report on fiscal matters and on public bodies.
In response, Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, Darlene Morrison, outlined the ministry's issues with the assessment.
By determining that a pre-budget statement must be the budget call, which for Jamaica is not something that's published, then yes, you are then suggesting that we do not have a pre-budget statement. But our pre-budget statement is actually the interim fiscal policy paper. It is the mid-year paper, which is legislatively due 6 months after the start of a fiscal year. And it also, the legislation also indicates what is to be included Our Public Accounts, our Public Administration and Appropriation Committee actually meets on virtually a weekly basis. Not a few times per year. It meets very frequently. It looks at the ongoing budget, various areas of what they are being implemented. It's discussed with the various permanent secretaries, relevant heads of agencies. There is significant review of that taking place during the year.
Capri's researcher Monique Graham explained how the Research Institute compiled and presented its information.
The interim fiscal paper report did not meet the requirements, and therefore it could not be used as a pre-budget statement. And this is because it mainly contains information about the fiscal year in which it is published, and not necessarily about the upcoming year. There are no policy discussions about the upcoming year, and even though it has certain macroeconomic forecasts, it is not enough. We do want to reflect accurate information. Right? That is your job here at Capri. And as far as it goes, we want to do that. So I welcome the discussion, especially as regards to the pre-budget statement, so that we can both agree on what is appropriate.
The Caribbean Policy Research Institute launched its latest report following the money, transparency and oversight in the government budget process in Jamaica last Thursday. In Thursday's trading session, the JSE Combined Index advanced by 4,374 points to close at under 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 83 stocks, of which 30 advanced, 35 declined, and 18 traded firm. The Junior Market Index advanced by 22 points to close at under 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for 1834 Investments Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and CAC 2000 9.5% preference shares. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica, Blue Power Group Limited, and Caribbean Cement Company Limited. Trading firm were Berger Paints Jamaica, Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited, and Siboney Group Limited. Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares was the volume leader with 1.5 million units, followed by Mailpack Group Limited with 1.3 million units, and Lumber Depot Limited with over 900,000 units. Now for the foreign exchange. The US dollar on Thursday, December 10, ended trading at $144.56. The Canadian dollar sold for an average $113.13. The pound sterling traded for $193.62, and the euro ended trading at $177.37. Oil rose on Friday, adding to sharp gains overnight that saw Brent top $50 for the first time since March, as the rollout of coronavirus vaccination programs fed hopes that demand for fuel rebound up next year. Brent crude futures gained 30 cents at $50.55 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude futures added 31 cents to $47.09 a barrel. And that does it for this edition of the Business Report on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson.
In regional news, on Thursday, the United Nations and Trinidad and Tobago hosted a virtual dialogue about what it means to recover better during this pandemic. Topics included the impact of the digital divide on education and food security in a pandemic. Kimberly De Sousa tells us more.
Addressing the impact of the digital divide on education, lecturer at the University of the West Indies, Murala Sambucharan, said as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, over 60,000 students in the country are without information and communication technology services or devices. This, she said, presented a few challenges which will have long-term effects, the most critical being learning loss.
So in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, the story when schools reopen is really going to be one of inequity in opportunities that students experience during this break from physical school. And we need to think about how far disadvantaged students have fallen behind compared to their counterparts who were able to access online classes consistently.
However, all is not lost. Ms. Sambucharan said the educational sector needs to place emphasis on bridging the gaps in inequities, particularly the lack of access to critical services in the sector. Activist, organic farmer and chocolate maker Gillian Goddard believes that even before the pandemic, the right to food and nutrition was not a given. She said government needs to implement more policies to ensure food security for its citizens.
Currently, our government in power is doing some work on land policy, but this is something that really should have happened decades ago, that the people who are planting the food have ownership or at least some level of control over the land, which is not the case in Trinidad. I saw a study the other day, I can't remember the exact figure, but it's over 50% of our food is being grown on squatted land for which people have no title. That does not lead to food security.
Ms. Goddard believes proper policies with respect to market access and organizational access to distribution of goods are needed. Kimberly D'Souza, TTT News.
On Thursday, the Health Ministry in St. Lucia announced a free-to-download tracking app which will help authorities keep tabs on St. Lucians placed in home quarantine. The United States-based St. Lucian MIT graduate designed the 758 Care Alert digital app tracker. The island's COVID-19 contact tracers will be alerted if and when home quarantine is breached by anyone who has the 758 Care Alert app installed on their mobile devices.
The island's quarantine capacity is running out. On December 9th, the chief medical officer revealed more than 1,000 returning nationals have booked flights to spend the Christmas holidays in St. Lucia. Authorities are now offering returning nationals to quarantine at home for a mandatory 14-day period before they can venture out to enjoy this year's limited Christmas time festivities.
A listing is submitted to us at the Ministry of Health, where we now have officers, public health officers, who now go into those homes and identify or to assess whether this home meets the criteria and is suitable so somebody can safely quarantine at home. So the criteria for home quarantine would be, of course, a dwelling on its own or a room with an adjoining bathroom where there is limited or no contact with other persons within that same house.
To keep tabs on the 1,000 plus returning nationals, new tracking technology will be used to follow the whereabouts of everyone placed in home quarantine. With the help of Khalil Louisi, a St. Lucian Ivy League tech graduate based in the United States, the Health Ministry can now rely on the 758 Care Alert digital app, which gives immediate alerts on home quarantine breaches.
Even if somebody goes into your phone, they cannot see all of the places that you visited, so it is completely private. In the event that one individual does test positive for COVID-19 or for any infectious disease, really, they would choose to share that location log with the contact tracer. And the contact tracer would then be able to have a visual representation of all of the public places that that individual had gone to over the 14-day period. So it appears like if you look at a Google map, for instance, that's exactly what it looks like. The contact tracer has the choice to delete certain points if they don't think it's necessary. But what it does is it provides a mapping of the spread of the virus.
Returning nationals will also be tagged with a digital wristband. Paired with the 758 Care Alert mobile app, COVID-19 contact tracers will have an island-wide digital map of everyone under home quarantine at their fingertips.
Well, we're not doing the ankle bracelets. We're doing the wristwatches. It's basically for persons who will be on home quarantine and to ensure that they remain within a confined space, which is their home. So the contact tracing app and the wristwatch, their role or their purpose is
But
different.
the contact tracing app, as a nurse Cassius was indicating, can also show
that individuals are within the confines of their home. So we're using the two in order to be able to get a grasp, a firm grasp on home quarantine.
Yes, but like she said, you're not supposed to be leaving the home.
The 758 Care Alert digital app tracker is free to download from the Google and App stores. Rihani Isidore, NBC Prime.
In sports, we kick off with football. Local companies Yummy Bakery and Jamaica Producers have thrown their weight behind the Jamaica Premier League. A sponsorship deal was inked at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel in Kingston on Thursday. Yummy's Chief Operations Manager Alex Hendrickson and JP's Chief Commercial Director Maya Johnson both agreed that their brands have a natural synergy with the Premier League.
We at Yummy are also very excited about the opportunity to support our local national Premier League and play our little part in developing sport, the brand, our players and teams, as well as to show shed some light during these challenging times and bring a little joy to our little island.
We are absolutely delighted this morning to confirm our sponsorship at the club level for the Jamaica Premier League. We took this decision, Chris, because JP St. Mary's has been around since 1929 as the Jamaican snack, and we believe that the Jamaica Premier League is part of the fabric of what Jamaicans enjoy, and we always want to be there. We always want to be part of delivering fun and entertainment and nutrition and snacks and fruit to our Jamaican consumers. And we are really delighted to have this opportunity to work with the Jamaica Premier League.
In the upcoming weeks, we could see even more sponsors coming on board as organizers target $100 million in support. Local football has been in abeyance this year owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the league should tentatively resume in January. Professional football Jamaica chairman Chris Williams welcomed the new sponsors as he looks ahead to 2021.
As many of you would know, the Jamaica Premier League will shortly be celebrating 50 years, and it is truly a great time, especially in the middle of this crisis, for corporate Jamaica to be stepping forward. And we would like to salute Yummy and thank them for this support, and especially at this time. We are extremely happy that Jamaica Producers Group, through their St. Mary's brand, have decided to step forward at this critical time in the history of football and certainly of our country in the middle of this pandemic.
And that's the news on PBCJ. Thanks so much for watching. Keep safe.